On Thursday afternoon, I grabbed a half hour or so with a State of Tel Aviv and beyond favorite, Ya'akov Katz. We get into the unprecedented operational restrictions imposed on Ben Gurion Airport over this holiday period, which is one of the two busiest times of the year for travel in and out of Israel. We discuss the negotiations, if there actually are any, by the Trump administration with Iran, the possibility of an intensification of the conflict in the Strait of Hormuz, and possibly some sort of U.S. military action targeting Kharg Island, the beating heart of Iran's oil and gas economy. We talk about the battering of the north of Israel by Hezbollah and more. There's a lot going on. I'm Vivian Berkovich, former Canadian ambassador to Israel. Let's do this. Wonderful to see you as always, Ya'akov Katz. How are you?
Great to be with you.
Thanks for making time. It's been quite a period. How are things in Jerusalem? Noisy? Lots of sirens?
Yeah, I mean, we had our share of sirens today, and as we can imagine, it's been on and off over the last few weeks. But I always tell people Jerusalem is about half of what you'll see elsewhere, right? So if you're getting 5 a day in Tel Aviv, you're going to get 2 or 3 in Jerusalem. We're a little less important, but we're still important.
Yeah, well, and the north, of course, is getting totally hammered.
The north is Hezbollah, though, and that's, a whole other issue, which I have a lot of thoughts about, but that's a separate issue.
Okay. And where I am, the pace picked up as well. And I think we've talked about it before. I think they're aiming for the jam factory in Dimona, but I'm pretty far from Dimona. I'm about 40K or something.
I thought it was a textile factory.
Yeah, I don't know.
They make jam also. Wow, look at that.
That's what I heard.
Right. Really, it's an impressive place. They can do a lot of different things.
Meet the needs of the market.
I think this, and I hear this also from people in the defense establishment. I don't read too much into where the missiles are landing and what they're targeting. They do have some strategic targets, right? They have symbols that they want to try to take out. Imagine they were able to hit Dimona, the Air Force bases, significant military bases. If they, we have people who we want to move out of harm's way, right? Bibi's house, for example, is a known place. You're not going to want him sleeping there at night, just at the possibility that a missile can land. So that we take precautions with. But in general, they're trying to disrupt lives. They're trying to kill people. They're trying to undermine the sense of security and confidence of the country. That's really what this is about, right?
Right. Yeah, no, but we know there was an electrical facility, significant one, and that's been made public that was hit. There's shore air bases. We know about the oil refinery in Haifa. So, I think their aim actually generally isn't fantastic.
Bases have been hit in this war. IDF bases were hit in the 12-day war. IDF bases have been hit in this war.
Yep.
The IDF, of course, doesn't want to give away that information for free to anybody, so we keep that very protected. But some of this stuff you can't even hide. There's places in Tel Aviv that are IDF bases that have been hit. So it's not, look, at the end of the day, the Iranians are playing a longer game than sometimes we give them credit with. And I think that is sometimes the misread of it all, that we like to calculate how many interceptions and the numbers and how many launchers we destroyed and how many missiles we've degraded, et cetera, et cetera. But really, at the end of the day, the numbers is not how you evaluate victory. Victory is not won because I took out 80% or 90% of an arsenal. That's not a war. You didn't win the war, right? You degraded them. You potentially kick the can a little further down the road if there's going to happen again, but that's not victory.
So, even with the numbers, though, we've been hearing a lot of numbers for the last 2.5 years. And speaking only for myself, I have less confidence in the numbers. I recall vividly hearing that 90% of Hamas's fighting force was destroyed, and the next day basically came back ever powerful. And same with their weaponry, the inventory. We hear now in Iran, as you said, this fixation on numbers. We've taken out this. Does anyone really know how many launchers Iran has? And
Vivian, please, I just you're going through an open door, as we say.
Okay.
This drives me crazy.
All right. Close the door.
No, I want to respond because I think it's so, the IDF it throws around these numbers, and particularly about missile launchers, because missile launchers that's the big deal, right? You could have 1,000 missiles, you don't have 1,000 missile launchers, right? So you might have half, or you might have a quarter, and you reuse them. So if you can get the missile launchers, however many missiles you have doesn't really mean anything, right? Makes sense, all good. Now, the IDF said at the end of the 12-day war, right, that they had about 400 missile launchers. We destroyed about 75% of them, which meant they had about 100 to 150. And that's how they ended the war. When this war began, you go back and look at some IDF briefings. They spoke about how there's about 100 to 150 that they have. A week into the war, we destroyed 60% already. Wow, right? But suddenly we still have 150. 2 weeks into the war, we suddenly destroyed 75%, and they still have 150. And then 2 days ago, the IDF gave a briefing and said they had 400 now. So now it wasn't 150 that started with. It started with 400. We've destroyed about 300. They have 450. We destroyed 320, 310, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So they have about 100 to 150 left. It's still always 100 to 150 that they have. Now, what are the 300 that were destroyed? Of course, we've destroyed. You have videos that they put out where you see a bomb landing on a missile launcher. You know you destroy a missile launcher. A lot of them, if you really get into it, a lot of them are in underground, some of these missile cities that the Iranians have created in a number of places across the country that are hardened, that are deep underground or in a mountain, that we have destroyed the entrances to these facilities, and they cannot access them right now. Okay, good. But they'll be able to access them in a month or 2 months or 3 months. That whenever, here's something I've learned from now about 25 years in this business, and out of which about 12 of those years as a military reporter. Whenever the army, any army, starts to wrap up operations by talking about numbers, we killed X, we destroyed Y, we took out Z, you know that it didn't go as well as it should have, right? You don't need numbers to declare victory. When there is a victory, you know there is a victory. You are telling numbers to create a narrative that can create a perception of an accomplishment that you're not so sure about.
Yeah, and not having your deep background in military reporting or writing books about the military, I do have just raw powers of deduction, and I can read and think. And I've kind of come to the same conclusion, which is sort of sad because there is an erosion of trust already in the institutions that run this country, both political in my view and the IDF. And, there was some trust rebuilt, particularly in the IDF side, but it just feels like we're in a house of mirrors. I don't trust the information I'm getting. I'm on those briefings with the IDF spokesperson. Wonderful guy, it's not about that person, but it's about what is the quality and integrity of the information we're getting. And to your point, we went down that rabbit hole because you made the comment. I intended to start with something totally different, but you made the comment about victory and the Iranians having a very different concept and understanding of victory than we do. What is victory?
First of all, I just want to say one thing about the IDF, because I don't want to make it seem like, this is trash the military.
No.
Right. The IDF is working within the confines or the boundaries of what it has, right? The IDF can't declare victory. That's something that the political echelon can do. So the IDF, though, wants to show the public we're operating, especially as missiles are landing here. We need to portray that we're doing something. And by the way, that portrayal is hugely important for Israelis to maintain the resilience and to be able to withstand the stress and the pressure of up and down to the bomb shelter and the disruption to our lives, et cetera, et cetera. So all of that, I understand what the IDF is trying to do. I just want people to understand it's not real. It's to some extent almost fiction. So I totally agree with you. I mean, look, victory here, in my view, there's a number of potential victory images, right? One is the complete surrender of Iran. We're done, we're out, we're leaving. That's not going to happen. Two is regime change. It might happen, but it's not happening anytime soon. And the third is a mix, or is one or both of the two. Surrender of the 450 kilograms of highly enriched uranium that's under Isfahan. It's enough for 11 nuclear weapons, potentially if it's re-enriched a little higher to 90%. if they would give that over to a third party country, Russia or something, or to the Americans, whatever it is. And the second issue, which could be with this or could be separate, is the Strait of Hormuz being reopened and control, let's say, moving to the Americans together with the Gulf states. Without those three things happening, there's no victory here, even if our politicians will declare victory. Now, there is the option of what things seem to be moving towards, which is a ceasefire for negotiations. So announce a month-long ceasefire, and during this period of time, let's negotiate and see if we could reach a long-term deal. Under the deal, 15 points Trump has laid out, whatever. That could be a win too, right? You get a deal that gets you all the things you want. If that happens, even better, right?
Right.
But if we don't have any of that, then I think we had a good war that degraded and weakened and hurt them, and we're now safer than we were yesterday. But they will here's one thing you could take to the bank. Like the sun will rise tomorrow, the Iranians will rebuild immediately.
And that's, the million-dollar question, not question, but, we're safer tomorrow or today for how much longer? Another 6 months, 12 months? I mean, there's so much uncertainty, and that's what I think this second war has really highlighted. But let's go. You raise the Strait of Hormuz, the oil supply is being choked. Huge percentage of global oil supply comes through Persian Gulf and that choke point at the Strait of Hormuz, which for some reason Iran has managed to exercise total control over, even though, there are other countries in the region bordering on the Gulf and on the Strait. So we see now basically Iran is only letting its pals, tankers, pass through. So China, Russia, and their own. And the rest of the world is just sitting there powerless. There's talk, as you mentioned, about some kind of negotiated ceasefire so that they can work out a deal. So given the Iranian regime ideology and what we've seen of that regime for the last 47 years, do you really think that there is any serious political will in Iran to negotiate?
I think it really comes down to a question of how much are they hurting and how much more can they sustain. Now, we don't really know the answers to those questions.
Right.
The IDF intelligence has these assessments that they give, which I'm constantly hearing different versions of. They're hurting much more. They don't want much more of it. All that with a grain of salt. We don't really know. And therefore, if the Iranians want this over, then they'll try to make a deal. They'll try to make the best deal they can, but
Right.
they will try to make a deal. If they're okay with this continuing and they think they can wait out the Americans and that Trump eventually will have no choice but to just withdraw and declare victory unilaterally without really having a victory, then they'll do that. And I mean, the other thing we should just also always keep in mind is that whenever Iran sits down at the table and negotiates, they kind of do a pretty good job, right? The JCPOA is a case in point. And therefore, the fact that there might now be a month of negotiations during a ceasefire, so much can go wrong during this month that I wouldn't assume that just because now there's some sort of ceasefire, everything is okay.
Okay, so I'm going to be, a bit of a buzzkill now and say that I actually just don't think that's going to happen for a gazillion reasons. Ceasefire and negotiations for a month. And then that means that one of a number of other things may be going on. We have President Trump saying, negotiate or else, but I really want a diplomatic solution. And recall how in the weeks leading up to the beginning of the war on February 28th, many people thought there's no way he's going to negotiate. They're sitting in the room in Geneva and something's going to come out of it. And then kaboom, for whatever reason, it started on the 28th. And then afterwards, people said, wow, wasn't he that was brilliant psyops. He totally faked them out. I don't know. None of us know. But there is the possibility, again, that, floating or putting out the carrot and saying, come and negotiate last chance on terms that President Trump says will satisfy Israel and will be good for America and the world, those terms will never be accepted by Iran, ever. And so in the meantime, plans are being made to launch a major attack on both the Strait of Hormuz, more importantly, Kharg Island. And Kharg Island, as we know, is basically the beating heart of the Iranian economy. It's where all of their oil and natural gas is refined, is loaded into tankers. It's just a big island full of oil. Israel did hit some IRGC targets where we were told that the storage tanks and other facilities that on Kharg Island, which were just used to service and support the IRGC, were hit in airstrikes a week or so ago. We know that both America and Israel do not want to destroy the civilian industry infrastructure on Kharg Island. And they've said this a number of times publicly, and I'm inclined to believe it, that when Iran rebuilds, hopefully under another regime, that they will have some infrastructure to work with, that the country won't be destroyed. So President Trump could be sitting there and saying, you know what? You guys aren't working with us. You're playing games. You have no serious intention to negotiate. Your whole mindset for 47 years has been to wait us out because we're accountable to the public in a way that you're not. We have elections coming up. You don't. So I'm just going to come in. I've got 4,000 super duper Marines who you're going to talk about in a moment, who can do amphibious landings and parachuting and all kinds of crazy stuff. We're going to occupy Kharg Island. We're going to take control of Kharg Island. And that we're also at the same time going to free up the choke that you've put on Iran at the Strait of Hormuz so that all tankers may pass through and relieve the squeeze on the global economy. What do you think is the likelihood of Trump planning that kind of attack? And bear with me just a little longer, because we have weird stuff going on here in Israel. And in that kind of bucket of weird stuff, basically the closing of civilian airports to civilian air traffic until mid-April. I mean, there's a trickle being permitted by the government, but it's only to maintain the appearance of keeping the airport open, as opposed to really keeping the airport open. And in my view, correct me if I'm wrong, this is a very drastic measure. And I think it's unprecedented. And you and I will both recall in 2014 when Secretary of State John Kerry forced the closure of Ben Gurion for 24 hours. And I remember it very well because I was in office at the time. And fair to say that Prime Minister Netanyahu went ballistic over that. Like, ballistic. You can't shut down our airport, civilian air traffic for real reasons and symbolic reasons. And now here we are, and they basically squeeze the top and shut it off. That to me is concerning. And that says to me that something's up.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. I mean,
There is.
It's hard to know, Trump, we have no way of really predicting what he's going to do. Kharg Island, the Marines, are they coming to take the island? Are they coming to protect the shoreline of the strait if the ships start to go through? Are they going to be used before any ceasefire is called? Are they going to be used as a sword to threaten the Iranians if the talks collapse? Is the attempt at talks more deception? Is it real?
I just want to make one thing very clear to people listening. The talks that you're referring to actually haven't begun.
Correct. No, there are no talks yet. Right. There are no talks yet. Yes. If there are going to be talks.
Got it.
Then is there going to be a ceasefire for the period and duration of talks? And if there is a ceasefire during the duration of talks, how long will that last? Is it going to be a month and then there's a deadline? Is it going to last as long as it's needed? Is it going to collapse in the middle? Is someone going to do something? We don't know, right? So that's what I'm talking about. But during that month or weeks or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or however long it's going to be called for to allow the talks, we should just be prepared that this doesn't mean the war is over, right? That's my point. So I also don't know, because we've had 2 instances already where Donald Trump has called for talks and then allowed or initiated his own war. June allowed Israel to attack. Now Israel and America attacked, both while talks were supposed to be taking place. I don't know how to read what these talks are about, if there will be talks at all. So it's very difficult. And therefore, I could see the Marines being used, definitely. Even despite the claims that no boots will be put on the ground, I could very well see a scenario that he says, no, they're just for the island, or they're just for the shoreline, or they're just for there, or they're just for the limited operation in Isfahan to get out the 450 kilos, or they're just. But then it starts to evolve. I mean, when this started, I said right away, a week. That's it. No longer. No way Trump stays in this so long. There were a lot of people who thought that, right? I mean, we're now a month into this almost. So I don't think anyone should predict or try to anticipate what he might do and what he might not do. And to his credit, by the way, he has long been a hawk on Iran, and he's really following through. And I think that's a good thing. To the issue of the airport, I mean, there are genuine concerns about the airport, and I understand them, right? The airport is being targeted. The city near the airport, I think, holds the record right now for like the most sirens because of constantly the airport being targeted. That would be a huge success if they could hit an airplane on the runway or on the tarmac at Ben Gurion Airport. That would not be a small feat for them. But, and therefore precautions obviously need to be taken. And if you look at the UAE and other countries, they have also limited and restricted use of the airspace in civilian airline flights. But there is a problem, which I 100% agree with, that people in this country don't have the ability to really travel if they want, to go places if they want. There's disturbing images that have come out of the airport of what looks to be line after line that's just men dressed in black with black hats, obviously ultra-Orthodox, which is where are they going, and why are they the ones who are being selected for flights? I can tell you that I flew for 2 days overseas this week, and I did not think that my flight would happen, but it did. So I actually did go. The issue is to leave is a problem. To come back is easy, right? Because you have to be on one of those. When I flew, it was 100 or 20, 120, 130 people allowed on a flight. Now it's down to 50. So who are the 50 that get selected? Coming back, the plane can be full. I don't fully understand why they have that distinction, but there must be some logic behind it all, or not. And I'll say something else. I'll do a full confession here. I have the highest status of, known to man on El Al. So someone said to me, oh, that's why they kept you on the flight, because you just have, like, I didn't ask for anything special, but they didn't cancel me because I have that status. So people who don't, they don't get him. On the other hand, you do see all these ultra-Orthodox people standing in line. I don't know why are they getting? I don't know. I don't have the answers. I don't know. I also ask you another question. We have an airport down in Ramon near Eilat. Why is that not being used? Why not use both?
So I'll tell you what I know, because I think that there's just something that doesn't smell right about these restrictions. And I think that's why I raised it in the whole context of Kharg Island and the Strait of Hormuz, because it causes me to think that a not insignificant operation may be in the works. What I was told by a senior El Al executive, I'm still waiting to speak to one of their many media people. I was told that when the directives came from the government to limit outgoing passengers to 50 per flight, that was then done on the basis El Al culled passengers on the basis of status. So you reward a certain elite class of society and humanitarian and medical reasons. Now, me and my daughter were supposed to be flying on Monday or Tuesday. I received a notice by email telling us that we were removed from the flight. No one contacted me to ask if we had any medical, humanitarian, or other reasons to be traveling. So my sense is that they did this solely on the basis of status. And to your point about many men in long black coats and black hats standing in line, I would suspect that has something to do with the balance of power in the coalition.
Well, also, I'll add one other thing, Vivian. The owner of Halal is an American Jew who I think leans ultra-Orthodox. And
Mm,
someone explained this also to me. This is another piece of the puzzle.
yeah.
That all those ultra-Orthodox you're seeing in those lines who are leaving, those are people who are either studying in yeshiva or families, young families who are also here studying in yeshivas who want to go back to their parents in America or something like that. And because the owner of Halal is also, part of that community, then there is a preference that is made for those people.
There's been some, I don't believe that it was just kind of, called by a computer. There's clearly been some input and influence used. And I think it's appalling because, we've all been sitting here for 2.5 years dealing with a lot. We're living under incredible stress, and there may be preferential treatment given to a certain class that perhaps shouldn't get it. That this is the way in which it's kind of randomly being determined, possibly, is a little concerning. We also know that there's a call up of 400,000-ish reservists, and I expect that the IDF does not anticipate the same response rate as they saw on October 7th and then the weeks following. It's going to be a much lower response rate, I would think.
You said that,
Million
yeah.
and a half, 1.5 million Israelis typically travel at this time of year. It's a time when people like to come visit, but when Israelis who aren't terribly religious, and even those who are
No, it's a
religious,
great time because you have a long holiday.
exactly, and it's a good
Or
time.
even us religious people. We went one year, few years ago, 3 years ago, Passover. We flew to Paris. We were able to get kosher food, all the matzah, all the stuff. We kept kosher Pesach there. And then there's nothing like being in Paris for when Passover ends, by the way. I mean,
Yeah.
the
Oh my God. Well,
croissants.
I might take
Come on.
Italy over Paris, but
Right. But I mean, it's a great place to break the Passover ban on bread in. Yes.
absolutely, absolutely. So, in any event, all of this kind of feeds into this. There's a real lack of certainty. There's a lack of clarity, in my view. You raised the issue of the airport in Eilat. I was told that it's being used for other purposes.
Mm.
But
Okay.
again, yeah, we'll leave it at that. But again, the whole move to build a proper international airport for civilian use in Eilat was motivated by that shutdown in 2014. Anger and, Prime Minister Netanyahu saying, we will never be in that position again. We will not. But yes, there are no civilian flights being rebooked through the Eilat airport. And again, I'm advised by senior executive at El Al that request was made to the government and denied. So
Yeah.
it just doesn't feel right. Okay, so you think that we're going into Passover early next week. There's a lot of uncertainty. There seems to be this kind of continued high level of missiles from Iran and rocket fire from Hezbollah in Lebanon. So what do we make of it all in closing? Where are we at?
Look, there's a big question, right, which we don't yet have the answer to as well. Whatever happens, if there are ceasefire talks, does Lebanon become a piece of that as well, right? And do we try to get a regional deal here? Israel, of course, does not want to see that happen, and I think that makes sense. I also think that what's happening in Lebanon is exactly why what we opened this conversation with about the numbers and the launchers and the missile stockpiles is exactly why that is not a victory. In November 2024, and when the ceasefire went into effect with Lebanon, and in the year that followed, when we were attacking Lebanon every day, it seemed that Hezbollah had been eviscerated. Hezbollah was not responding. There was the pager attack, the beeper, the walkie-talkie attack, Nasrallah's killing, etc., etc. I saw a headline in a newspaper where I write in the Jerusalem Post the other day, 90% of Hezbollah's missiles destroyed.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I said to myself, that sounds nice, but if I live in Kiryat Shmona now, that doesn't mean anything to me because I am getting hammered. Kiryat Shmona began on October 7th, 2023, with 24,000 people. When the people were evacuated shortly after, and then they returned when the ceasefire went into effect, 16,000 came back. They lost about 8,000 people. There's supposed to be 16,000. Already several thousand have left due to what's happening.
Right.
People are holding on because they know that if they leave, no one's going to come back.
Yeah.
We as a country are abandoning a piece of of our territory. Now, beyond that issue, so like when we count missiles, we're not winning. We're trying to comfort ourselves. It doesn't mean anything. I mean, again, sorry, it means that you're doing something, but it's not enough. And therefore, we can't now declare a ceasefire with Lebanon or with Hezbollah, right? I mean, to do this again in 8 months? So, I mean, if we stop with Iran, do we have to stop with Hezbollah? These are some of the questions that we don't have the full answer to. In the IDF, they definitely are saying no, but you don't know what's going to come of any talks that are going to take place between Trump and the Iranians.
Okay, so basically, we know nothing. That's our conclusion.
I mean, look, we know that...
Give me some certainty.
Here's what we know, right? This is true. We are doing an amazing thing, and the Israeli military has achieved unbelievable accomplishments.
Correct.
And the alliance between Israel and the United States is, wow, remarkable, historic, unbelievable. And we know that the Iranians are weaker than they were before. But without a clear, decisive victory, what we are doing is we're delaying, we're hurting, we're degrading, but we're just setting ourselves up for this to happen again.
Right.
Right. And we should just be aware. By the way, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't know that I'm against it. But I just want you to be honest and tell me this is what we're doing. And say we finished for now, but be aware this might happen again in a year. And just prepare people for it. That's okay. We're adults. We can take it.
Well, I'm still kind of, smarting from the cancellation of my tickets. But yeah, in the big picture, I hear you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Always interesting. And have a safe and happy, if you can, Pesach.
Same to you and same to everyone.
And to everyone.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach. Thanks so much. Thanks, as always, for being here. And until next time, stay safe and have a good weekend. We love hearing from you. So please comment on our website, stateoftelaviv.com, or send us a note to vivian@stateoftelaviv.com. That's VIVIAN @stateoftelaviv.com. And if you go to our website, stateoftelaviv.com, you can find the subscribe button and take it from there. Hope that you do that. On behalf of the State of Tel Aviv core team, Jan Zabo, our creative, graphic, visual, and marketing man, Amir White, producer and editor extraordinaire, sound guy, who is also impressively patient with me and my boomer tech deficiencies, and our social media manager who pitches in on everything. Thank you, Maya Naftalin. Thanks to the team, and thank you, listeners, for being here. Until next time, stay safe.